In this video, we will present the Sequence Manager and its functionalities. The Sequence Manager is always on top of the upper right edge of the design area and provides a graphical representation of the design's order and an easy way to change it at will. Now, you can click on any icon and drag it to any position you like to create your own sequence. By default, the software operates in manual mode, where the user manually decides the embroidery sequence. However, there is an auto sequence button on the top toolbar. When you switch to the auto sequence mode, the software intelligently determines the sequence of all design objects based on its built-in optimization strategy. Within the optimization strategy section, specific rules dictate this automatic optimization. For example, if you select the large to small option, the software will embroider larger objects first. Apply auto sequence, and if you switch to slow redraw, you will see that objects are grouped by color and the largest objects sent first, followed by the second largest. Notice that if auto trim overlapping objects is checked in optimizer options, then on the Sequence Manager you see the overlapping parts trimmed. Whereas if it is not checked, then you see whole objects, not trimmed ones. Furthermore, if you switch to auto sequence mode with auto trim overlapping objects option checked, then some of the overlapping parts may need to be permanently trimmed to achieve the desired embroidery results according to the strategy that you have previously selected. So if you just want the auto sequence without any automatic trimming of objects, then make sure you keep the auto trim overlapping objects disabled before using auto sequence. The auto sequence tool can be applied on the design once, then the software continues in manual mode. Let's explore the Sequence Manager in detail. Next to each sequence icon, you can see a numeric value which represents the position of this design part in the embroidery sequence. The objects positioned higher on the Sequence Manager are those that will be embroidered first. Furthermore, you can distinguish between whether it is a fill or outline shape. Now you can scroll through to see the different shapes of the design, and if you click on a shape, it becomes selected. When deleting an object, the next object in the sequence automatically becomes selected to keep the focus on the current position, thus saving production time. If you hold the Control key down, you may click on multiple sequence icons to add them to the selection. Using the Control key, you can also remove icons from a selection. Additionally, if you hold the Shift key down, you can select all the in-between objects. So, hold the Shift key down and click on the first icon, then scroll to the last object you want to select, and while still holding the Shift key, click on that last item. Now all the sequence icons from the first one to the last one get selected. You can also use the Control and Shift keys in combination. That is, if you select a series of sequence icons using the Shift key and then hold the Control key pressed down, you can add other non-sequential icons to the selection or remove selected icons from the selection. If you right-click on any sequence icon, then you also get General Selection options. Using Select All, you can select all sequence icons. Using Select None, you can deselect everything. And using Inverse Selection, you can select all other icons except the ones already selected. For designs with too many design parts, it may not be easy to drag the sequence icons to the position you want them to be. In such case, an easier way to move one or more select sequence icons is to scroll up or down to the direction where you want them to be. Right-click on the sequence icon where you want them positioned, and from the appearing menu, choose Move Before and Move After to position the icons right before or after, accordingly, to where you right-clicked. Additionally, if you select non-sequential icons and right-click on any of the selected icons, you have the option that is called Join Together to bring these sequence icons one next to the other. The icons will then be moved next to the icon you right-clicked upon. On the right-click menu, there is also the option to reverse the order of two or more sequence icons. To do so, simply select two or more sequence icons, right-click on top of the selection and use the reverse option. The Hide Show Item feature allows you to hide and show specific objects at will. This can be helpful when working with designs that have multiple layers in order to better focus on the underlying shapes for clearer editing. When you right-click on an object in the Sequence Manager, there are also two special function commands, Trim and Stop, which instruct the embroidery machine to perform a specific action. If you expand the trim option, you can see that by default it is set to auto. You can choose to keep it enabled by pressing on or disabled by pressing off. The same applies in the case of the stop function. When you see this icon, all the design parts are separate icons. If you click on this icon, then the design parts are grouped by color and the icon changes into this palette icon. This is a two-state button, so by default you see all objects as separate icons, and if you press once, the objects are grouped by color. If you click once again, you switch back to separate icons. The Group by Color function does not group fill and outline shapes together, even if they have the same color. When the sequence icons are grouped by color, then next to each icon you see a series of numeric values. The Sequence Manager can only be resized or minimized and cannot be closed. Notice that if you bring your mouse on the left edge of a sequence window, a double arrow appears and you can click and drag to make sequence icons smaller or larger. If you shrink it too much, the sequence numbers and the colors are hidden. To minimize the Sequence Manager, you have to click on the pointing icon on the header, and to maximize, you need to click again on the same icon, which will now point to the opposite direction.